Barcelona family, what just happened on El Chiringuito is historic. Real Madrid has just been humiliated 4-0 by PSG, and the pundits are exploding live on air. But that's nothing compared to what Ronald Araujo has just confirmed about his future at Barcelona. His words will move all culés. And we have exclusive information about Camp Nou that the club doesn't want you to know. Real dates, hidden problems, and the truth about our comeback. Like and subscribe now, and stay until the end, because this news will completely change your perspective on Barcelona. We've just received the most striking images from El Chiringuito, the program that moves Spanish football, where a total war has broken out between the Madridistas and the Barca fans. And we're not talking about just any debate. We're talking about analyses that go straight to the heart of what's happening in both clubs. Why is what happened today so important? Because we are in the middle of the transfer market. Barcelona is on the verge of returning to Camp Nou, and the decisions made in the coming weeks will shape the future of the next season. And believe me, after what you're about to hear, your perspective on El Clásico will change forever. Let's start with what was the central theme of the entire discussion: the historic humiliation suffered by Real Madrid at the hands of PSG in the Club World Cup. And when I say humiliation, I'm not exaggerating. We're talking about a 4-0 loss that exposed all the deficiencies of Xavi Alonso's team. But here's what's most interesting. The pundits on El Chiringuito, who for months have been selling us on the idea that this Madrid was unstoppable, that Mbappé was going to win the Ballon d'Or, that the Club World Cup was going to be their tournament, are now trying to justify the unjustifiable. Listen carefully to this, because it's pure gold. One of the pundits said, word for word, "This defeat was useful because Madrid now has a clear radiography of what they need to improve." Seriously, they needed to be scored 4 goals to realize that the team has problems. And that's where things get really interesting for us, the culés, because while Madrid is being humiliated on a global scale, receiving criticism from all sides, we are building something solid, something that promises to be spectacular. Let's analyze point by point what happened with this Madrid, because it's important to understand why this defeat is so significant. First, the reality of Mbappé. Throughout the year, we've been sold on the idea that Mbappé was going to revolutionize Madrid, that his arrival would be the final blow to dominate Europe. But what have we seen? A lost player, with no connection to his teammates, unable to generate the expected impact. On El Chiringuito, they admitted that Mbappé and Vinicius cannot play together, that when both are on the field, the team loses its balance. Isn't that exactly what many serious analysts, including ourselves, predicted from the beginning? Second, the tactical problems of Xavi Alonso. Xavi Alonso, the coach who was supposedly going to lead Madrid to eternal glory, has once again shown that he has no plan B. When PSG was leading 2-0 after just 8 minutes, Madrid simply collapsed. There was no tactical reaction, no smart changes, no leadership from the bench. And that's something we, as Barca fans, should greatly appreciate, because while they have a coach who lacks ideas when things get tough, we have Hansi Flick, a technician who has shown at Bayern Munich that he knows how to build winning teams, that he knows how to adapt to circumstances. Third, the fragile mentality. But what is most concerning for Madrid and most encouraging for us is what we saw in terms of mentality. A team that is supposed to have the experience of winning Champions Leagues, that has players hardened by 1,000 battles, completely collapsed in the face of the first serious adversity. On El Chiringuito, they acknowledged that the Madrid players were dragging themselves on the field, that there was no intensity, no desire to fight. Is this the team they want to sell us as superior to Barcelona? Now comes the part that interests us most as culés, because while in Madrid they are in total crisis, we are living a moment of construction and hope that we haven't felt in a long time. And here, I want to pause to talk about something fundamental: the difference in projects. While Madrid has bet on short-term solutions, media transfers that generate headlines but not necessarily results, Barcelona is building something solid, something thought out for the long term. Flick's philosophy versus improvisation. Hansi Flick arrived at Barcelona with clear ideas. He didn't come to improvise, he didn't come to see what would happen, he came with a defined project, with a specific way of playing, with clear objectives, both short and long term. And what have we seen so far? A team that is beginning to show signs of what it can become. Young players growing under his tutelage, veterans finding a second youth, and, above all, an idea of the game that is beginning to take shape. Compare that with what's happening in Madrid. Xavi Alonso has been at the club for years, and we still don't know what his plan is. Are they going to play with Mbappe and Vinicius together? Are they going to sacrifice one of the two? Are they going to change the system? No one knows, not even them. The youth factor. But there's something else that excites me enormously as a Barca fan, and that's the youth factor. While Madrid bets on players who have already passed their prime or who arrive with the weight of impossible expectations to satisfy, we are seeing a golden generation grow. PEDRI, GAVI, Bald, Cubarsi. These youngsters are not just talented, they are hungry, they have that winning mentality that is forged in LAMINE, that understanding of the game that cannot be bought with money. And when I see the images of these players training with Flick, when I see the intensity they show, when I see how they assimilate the ideas of the German technician, I can't help but feel that we are on the verge of something special. Now comes the informational bombshell that will truly impact all Qs. We have exclusive information about the return to Camp Nou that completely changes what we thought was going to happen. According to sources very close to the Camp Nou works, sources who are directly involved in the project, the situation is much more complex than what the club has told us. And here, I will be completely transparent with you because I believe you deserve to know the truth, the reality of the works. Barcelona had officially communicated that the Gamper would be the landmark event marking the return to Camp Nou. We were all excited, we were all waiting for this historic moment, but the reality is that the works are much more delayed than we have been told. Technicians overseeing the works for the Barcelona City Council have confirmed to us that there is a lot of delay, a lot of delay. And when I say a lot, I mean weeks, even months behind the initial deadlines. Why is this happening? Several factors are complicating the situation. First factor, project modifications. Barcelona has made significant changes to the original project. This means they have had to request new permits, revise new plans, and this inevitably generates delays. When you change something in a project of this magnitude, it's not just about making the change and continuing. Everything needs to be revised. It needs to be ensured that everything complies with regulations. Safety must be guaranteed. Second factor, technical complexity. We are talking about a mammoth project. It's not about building a stadium from scratch. It's about completely renovating a historic stadium while preserving its essence. It's an enormous technical challenge that requires innovative solutions and time to implement them correctly. Third factor, permits and safety. The Barcelona City Council, and this must be acknowledged, is collaborating a lot with the club. They have allowed them to work 6 days a week, to work 24 hours straight in some cases, but at the same time, they have the responsibility to ensure that everything is done correctly, that all safety regulations are complied with. The request for 60,000 spectators. Here's something that surprised me greatly. Barcelona has made a request to the City Council for the Gamper to be played with 60,000 spectators. 60,000. Imagine what that means. It's not just about having the stadium ready to host the public. It means having all accesses functional, all security systems operational, all basic services working perfectly, and according to our sources, this is almost impossible for the Gamper date. The real dates. So, when can we really return to Camp Nou? Technical sources are talking about the end of September, October. That would be the most realistic date for the stadium to be able to host a significant number of spectators with all safety guarantees. This means that the first league matches will very likely have to be played outside of Camp Nou. We are talking about the first 3 or 4 match days, depending on the schedule and the progress of the works. Why is this information important? Because as Qs, we deserve to know the truth, we deserve to have realistic expectations, and also because it allows us to better understand the decisions the club is making in terms of planning. If we know that we are going to start the season outside of Camp Nou, we can better understand why certain transfer decisions are being made in a specific way. We can better understand why Flick is planning the pre-season in a certain way. And now, we come to one of the pieces of news that excites me the most as a Barca fan. The latest statements from Ronald Araujo and what they mean for the future of the club. Ronald Araujo has been one of those players who has generated a lot of speculation during this transfer market. There have been rumors of departure, interested teams, doubts about his continuity, but the signals we are receiving now are very positive. The statements that change everything. When asked directly if he wanted to continue wearing the Barcelona jersey, his answer was clear and unequivocal. For me, yes. 3 words that are worth more than 1,000 speculations. But it's not just what he said, it's how he said it, it's the context in which he said it. Araujo voluntarily showed up at the Ciutat Esportiva earlier than expected. He had vacation until July 13th, but he decided to advance his return to start working with Hansi Flick. What does this tell us? It tells us that he is a committed player, that he wants to be here, that he wants to be part of the project that is being built. The strategic importance of Araujo. Ronald Araujo is not an ordinary player. He is a 25-year-old central defender, at the ideal age for a defender, with international experience, leadership character, and an understanding of Barcelona's game that is not improvised. At a time when the club is betting on youth, having a player like Araujo is fundamental. He is that perfect balance between experience and projection, between present and future. And from a tactical point of view, he is exactly the type of player that Hansi Flick needs. A central defender who can play high, who can bring the ball out, who can lead the defensive line both technically and mentally. The clause and key dates. Here is a very important detail that all Qs should know. Araujo has a release clause that, until July 15th, is valued between 60 and 70 million euros. But from July 15th, this clause rises to 1,000 million euros. What does this mean? That if a club wanted to sign him by paying the clause, they had until July 15th to do so. After this date, it is practically impossible for him to leave, unless Barcelona decides to sell him, which seems increasingly unlikely. The Hansi Flick factor. But there's something else that seems fundamental to me in this entire situation. The Hansi Flick factor. Araujo will have the opportunity to work with one of the best coaches in the world, a technician who has demonstrated that he knows how to get the best out of his players. Flick has worked with world-class defenders. He has coached players like Jerome Boateng, Mats Hummels, and David Alaba. He knows exactly what a central defender needs to perform at the highest level, and I am convinced that he will help Araujo make a significant leap forward in terms of quality. Internal competition. It's true that Araujo will face competition. Inigo Martinez and Pau Cubarsí formed a very solid duo last season, but this isn't something negative, it's something positive. Internal competition makes all players give more, raises the overall level of the team, and moreover, with the schedule we have ahead of us, with La Liga, the Copa del Rey, the Champions League, and possibly other competitions, we will need all our central defenders at their best level. But now comes the most exclusive piece of information of all, something that hasn't been reported in any other media and that can completely change the perspective on what's happening at Barcelona. We have first-hand information on the conversations that Deco, Barcelona's sporting director, has had with Ronald Araujo, and what we've been told is absolutely revealing. Secret conversations. According to our sources, Deco has had several private meetings with Araujo in recent weeks. During these meetings, he explained in detail what the club's sporting project is, what role they want him to play, and what the short and long-term objectives are. But most importantly, they guaranteed him that he will be a fundamental piece in Hansi Flick's scheme. We're not talking about vague promises. We're talking about concrete commitments regarding his role on the team. Flick's tactical plan, and here's something that will excite all Qs. Hansi Flick has a very specific tactical plan for Ronald Araujo. He wants to use him not only as a central defender but also as a defensive pivot in certain matches, especially against teams that press very high. This tactical versatility is something that Flick values greatly. At Bayern Munich, he used David Alaba in a similar way, and the results were spectacular. Araujo has the physical and technical characteristics to play this role to perfection. Economic guarantees. But there's also an economic aspect that's important to mention. Barcelona has guaranteed Araujo that, regardless of the financial difficulties the club may face, his renewal and salary increase are assured. This is a very clear signal that the club considers him a long-term investment, a fundamental piece for the future. And for a player of his age and projection, these guarantees are fundamental. Now, I want to do a comparative analysis that I believe will be very revealing for all of you. Let's compare the current situation of Barcelona with that of Real Madrid, but not from an emotional point of view, rather from a purely objective perspective. Sporting project. Barcelona has a coach with clear ideas, a long-term project based on the academy and smart transfers, and a defined philosophy of play. Real Madrid has a coach who improvises as he goes, media transfers without tactical coherence, and an excessive dependence on individualities. Academy management. Barcelona is heavily betting on La Masia players, giving them real opportunities, building the future on solid foundations. Real Madrid has practically abandoned its academy. It prefers to spend fortunes on transfers rather than betting on its youth. Institutional stability. Despite the economic difficulties, Barcelona has clear leadership, a defined project, and stability in sporting decisions. Real Madrid lives on past successes, without a clear vision of the future, with erratic decisions in the transfer market. Looking to the future, and this excites me greatly as a Barca fan, I believe we are at a historic moment for the club, not only for the return to Camp Nou, not only for the arrival of Hansi Flick, but for the confluence of all these factors. The 2024-2025 season. This upcoming season will be fundamental for the future of Barcelona. It will be the season where we see if Flick's project really works, if the La Masia youth are ready to make the definitive leap, if the team can compete at the highest level in all competitions. And I have a feeling, based on everything we see, on all the signals we receive, that it will be a spectacular season. The return to Camp Nou. When we finally return to Camp Nou, and it will happen sooner than many think, it will be a magical moment. It will be the culmination of years of work, sacrifice, and hope. And I imagine that first match at the new Camp Nou with Hansi Flick on the bench, with our young talents shining on the pitch, with Ronald Araujo leading the defense, with all the fans singing. It will be something unforgettable. Cule family, we have reached the end of this exhaustive analysis, but before saying goodbye, I want to ask you a very important question. Do you think Barcelona is on the right path? Do you feel the same excitement as I do when you see everything that's happening? Leave me your comments below. I want to know what you think about everything we have analyzed today. I want to know if you agree with my perspective, if you have doubts, if something concerns you. And please, if this analysis seemed useful to you, if you feel you have learned something new, if you think it's worth sharing with other Cules, like this video. Each like helps us reach more Barcelona fans, to create a larger and stronger community. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because here you will always find the deepest analysis, the most exclusive information, and the most authentic passion for our Barcelona. And turn on the bell to be notified, because in the coming days, we will have very important news about transfers, about Camp Nou, about everything that's happening in our club. See you in the next video, and remember, Visca el Barca.